I just love it. Well, friends, welcome back once again. Look at this crowd. Will you please move to the center? We've got so many folks here. And also, we have for overflow today, we're going to be, I'm going to say simulcasting, that's not the word, live streaming, thank you, in Loud Hall. So there's more seats in Loud Hall with a projection over there. For anybody that doesn't have a seat. But I really would appreciate you all, I see seats, if you would move in, if you're not saving a seat. That would be great. Everybody's waving. Jeff Jones, here's your seat over here. There's a couple seats up front here, in the back. All right, let's get rolling here. Good morning, and thanks again for joining us for this week's Religion and Life Hour lectures. The Bailey, Edmond, and Jones families are grateful to help sponsor the endowment for this series. I'm Jamie Jones Shire, and I'm honored to be moderating the lectures this week. So raise your hand if any of you were able to come to the G-Dog film last night. Excellent, love that. Wasn't that great? Very, very good. I hope that was able to give you a broader picture of the story and the reach of Homeboy Industries. And I'm thankful for the partnership of the folks in our education program with us as we're bringing this lecture series to you. So today we're honored to have with us again Father Greg and his cherished friends and co-workers, Faylene and Jorge, who will each share parts of their stories with us. I've been reflecting on so much of what Father Greg shared with us yesterday about acatamiento. Did I say that right? Acatamiento. To look at something with attention or affectionate awe. That this is what our disposition should be at the margins. To stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than in judgment in how they carry it. That's a takeaway that I want to change me from the inside out. I hope I carry that with me for a long time to come. He said we don't serve those on the margins, but we must see ourselves in kinship with them. These are those prepositions, again, that Jason was talking to us about on Sunday. If you know, you know, if you were there. So good. All right, so let's sing. Please rise as you're able and join me in singing hymn number 430, Master, Let Me Walk With Thee. Please pray with me. Loving, gracious, and good God, thank you for people like Father Greg and others who remind us that we are delightful to you. Thank you that you call us beloved, and that in you we will always find belonging. May we believe our true names and live fully into them. We belong, we are beloved, and we are delightful. Open our minds and hearts to fully receive all that you have for us this day through Father Greg, Feline, and Jorge. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Please join me in welcoming Father Greg Boyle.
Thank you, Jamie. I used to fret a long time ago because people have heard you before, and it used to kind of undo me a little bit. Like I went to Australia and I thought, oh great, no one will have heard me before. And then, YouTube and such are the bane of my existence. I once spoke at a foster grandparent gathering in Orange County one summer, a huge gathering. And then they asked me to speak the following summer. And I thought, well, gosh, I think it's all the same people, but oh well, I say yes anyway. So after that second talk, a foster grandmother came up to me, and I think she liked the talk. She had big tears in her eyes. And she grabbed both my hands, and she said, I heard you last year. It never gets better. So kind of hoping she misspoke there. So here's the aerial view of this morning. I'm going to recap Yak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jorge today. And if we have time remaining, Jorge and I will engage in a question and answer. So recap, Jamie, that was a good recap, because we are God's delight. In fact, in the Hebrew Bible, that's kind of the name God has for us, my delight. And even when we find ourselves less than delightful, God doesn't delight in us less, because that's the kind of God we have, who loves without measure and without regret. And that's not so hard to understand, because you're that way with your kids and your grandchildren. I never get this, because somehow we think that we're better parents than God, and so we have this notion that somehow we have to do something or stop doing something to have God love us, so it's the kind of one false move God instead of the no matter whatness of God. And so once you know the God of love, you fire all the other gods, because God, it just wants us to know our true selves in loving. And once we know our true selves there, we find that loving is our home, and then we're never homesick. And that's God's dream come true, a community of kinship, such that God might know it, but so that God might recognize it. But part of the problem is that we get stuck in this place where we, our access to knowing ourselves is compromised by a lot of things: trauma, mental health issues, addiction, and so it's hard for us to see, and it's important to. I remember I was speaking at the LA Times Festival of Books, and I was on a panel with a rabbi and a columnist from the LA Times. I don't know what we were talking about, but at one point I said, there are two kind of essential things, notions that we embrace at Homeboy. One, everybody's unshakably good, and two, we belong to each other. No exceptions to either of those things. And then I said, rhetorically I suppose, Now, do I think every single vexing, complex social dilemma would disappear if we embrace those two notions? And then I said, yes, I do. And the entire auditorium burst into laughter. And I was kind of startled by it, you know. And when the laughter subsided, I said, yes, I do. And I just think it's the solution is to know that everybody's unshakably good. And we belong to each other because this is how God sees. And so we want to align our hearts with that God. So the voice breaks through the cloud. You are my beloved, in whom I'm wonderfully pleased. And that is meant for you as well. From the God who is not waiting for you to do something or to stop doing something. Many years ago, I knew a homie named Robert who, at 9 years old, he was thrown out of his house by the stepfather, and the mother kind of chose the stepfather over him. 9 years old, homeless, dumpster diving, wandering the streets. He eventually got in a gang, eventually got locked up, and then he came to Homeboy, and he worked on our graffiti removal crew. And during Christmas, we have kind of a lengthy break, for Christmas and then like till January 5 or something. And so I was sitting in my office, one of our older headquarters, and I see Robert walk in the first day back, and I thought, I wonder what he did for Christmas. So I called him in, and I asked him that question. Oh, I was just at home, knowing that he has no people. And I said, by yourself? He goes, oh no, I invited 6 guys from the graffiti removal crew. Guys like me who had no place to go. And he named the guys, and 3 of them were enemies. Folks he used to shoot at. And I said, wow, so what did you do? And he goes, well, you're not going to believe it, I cooked a turkey. Wow, I'm impressed. How did you prepare it? He goes, ghetto style. And I told him I wasn't familiar with that recipe. And he said, well, you put salt and pepper, you rub a gang of butter on it, you squeeze 2 limones, it tasted proper. I said, wow. What else did you have besides turkey? That's it, just turkey. Yeah, the 7 of us sat in the kitchen staring at the oven, waiting for the turkey to go down. Did I mention it tasted proper? And I said, yeah, you did. And then I said, Robert, how'd you get to be like this? Knowing his backstory so fully. And he knew what I was asking. And he said, I used to suspect that there was something of goodness here, but I could never find it. Until one day, I found it. Goodness. And his eyes well up with tears, and he says, ever since that day, I've always known who I was. Now nothing can touch me. And that's the sound of somebody discovering their true selves and loving, and nothing can touch him. The Buddhists say, oh, nobly born, remember who you really are. And so we're all trying to walk each other home to health and to wholeness, and so that people know how nobly born they are. And that's our task, is to hold the mirror up. I gotta tell you, I would have thought I won the whole damn lottery if Jorge Baltasar was my son. So I invite him up now to share his story with you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. First, I want to say thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. My name is Jorge Baltazar. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. People see me today and they see an intake coordinator at Humboldt Industries. They see someone who graduated high school, someone continuing his education, someone who works with youth and families, someone who's rebuilding his life. But they don't see it's everything it took to get here. They don't see the little boy who believed he was a burden. They don't see the teenager looking for somewhere to belong. They don't see the inmate sitting alone in a prison cell. They don't see the addict who thought he would die with a needle in his arm. They don't see the thousands of small decisions that slowly brought me back to life. This morning, I want to share that journey with you. Because maybe someone here knows what it's like to feel broken. Maybe someone here loves someone who is struggling. Or maybe someone has already given up on themselves. If that's you, I hope by the end of my story, you realize something I had to learn the hard way. My worst chapter doesn't have to become your story. People often ask me where everything started. The truth is, it didn't start when I joined the gang. It didn't start when I went to prison. It didn't even start when I became addicted to heroin. For me, it started when I was a little boy. Growing up, home wasn't always a place that felt safe. I watched my parents struggle. I watched them fight. As a child, you don't understand why adults do what they do. You just know how it makes you feel. I remember one Christmas when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. My dad came home drunk. He picked up our Christmas tree and he threw it outside. When we ended up opening our presents early because nobody knew what the rest of the night was going to look like, I remember thinking, this isn't normal. Another memory has stayed with me my entire life. I remember my father hitting my mother so hard that her head went through the wall. I ran into the kitchen, I grabbed a little butter knife. Not because I thought I could stop him, I was just a little kid. I just wanted to help my mom. I remember standing there frozen, I couldn't move. Fear has a way of doing that. I remember standing there frozen, I couldn't move. My mom grabbed my sister and me, and we'd run outside. Sometimes we'd hide on our neighbors' porches. Some people would come outside with blankets. They didn't ask no questions. They just let us stay there until it was safe. I remember hiding in my mother's arms while my dad drove by spinning his tires. One night, we stayed outside until the sun came up. Those are things children shouldn't have to experience. There were times my dad came home covered in blood after fights. I remember another night when he came home drunk and high and he smashed his own head through the bedroom window. There was blood everywhere. As a little boy, I made myself a promise. I told myself I'll never become like my dad. I'll never drink, I'll never use drugs, I'll never make my family feel the way I feel right now. But life has a way of humbling us, because sometimes the very thing we swear we'll never become is exactly what we become if we never heal. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't understand as a child. My father wasn't born wanting to hurt people. He had his own pain, his own trauma, his own battles. That doesn't excuse what happened, but it reminded me that pain has a way of spreading unless someone decides to stop it. I carried that pain with me for years. Eventually, I started believing something that breaks my heart to even say out loud. I thought my parents would be better off without me. I blamed myself for their struggles. I blamed myself for their arguments. I convinced myself that if I wasn't around, maybe life would be easier for everyone else. No child should ever think like that, but I did. And at 15 years old, I left home. Not because I hated my family, not because I wanted my freedom. I honestly believed I was doing them a favor. The problem was I left home with no plan, no job, no education, no guidance. And to make things even harder, I had a baby on the way. Imagine being 15 years old, you're still trying to figure out who you are. Now imagine carrying the weight of becoming a father. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to provide, I wanted respect. I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere. And when you're looking for belonging, the wrong people can look like the right people. The streets became my teacher, That's where I met the homies. For the first time in my life, I felt accepted. They laughed with me, protected me, made me feel important. Looking back now, I realized what I was really searching for wasn't violence, it wasn't money, it wasn't power, it was family. I wanted someone to tell me, you matter. When they asked me if I wanted to get into the neighborhood, I didn't hesitate. I actually felt honored. I thought I finally found my people. I didn't realize I was stepping into a life that would cost me almost everything. When I got into the neighborhood, I thought I had found what I've been looking for my whole life. Acceptance, respect, brotherhood. I finally felt like I belonged somewhere. What I didn't realize was that belonging can come with a price. At first, everything looked exciting. The older homies had nice cars, money, confidence. People respected them. Or at least that's what I thought at the time. From the outside, it looked like success. Nobody showed me the funerals. Nobody showed me the mothers crying. Nobody showed me the prison visits. Nobody showed me the empty seats at birthdays and Christmas dinners. I was too young to see the full picture. I only saw the highlights. So I jumped in with both feet. Before long, I wasn't just hanging around anymore. I was participating. Doing whatever I thought I needed to do to earn my place. I wanted the older homies to look at me and say, he's solid. I chased validation. I confused fear for respect. I confused loyalty and blind obedience. And somewhere along the way, violence became my drug. Every dangerous situation gave me an adrenaline rush. Every reckless decision made me feel like I had something to prove. I wasn't living anymore. I was performing. Trying to become the version of a man that I thought everyone expected me to be. Back then, I used to judge people who were addicted to drugs. I remember seeing people inside trap houses just to get high. Trap house where a lot of gang members gather around, sell drugs, and people go there and get high. I think I could never be like that. I'll never lose control like they did. I thought drugs made people weak. I had no idea that pride can be just as dangerous as addiction. Because addiction doesn't always start with a needle. Sometimes it starts with anger. Sometimes it starts with approval. Sometimes with the need to belong. Mine started with violence. Then one decision changed everything. Before I knew it, I found myself in Los Angeles County Jail. I was facing 36 years to life. 36 years. I wasn't even old enough to understand what that really meant. I remember sitting in those cold cells. Hours felt like days, days felt like weeks. Every time another inmate came back from court, everyone wanted to know one thing. What you get? 5 years? 10 years? 15 years? 20 years? Life without possibility of parole? Those words echoed through the holding tanks every single day. Every answer made my stomach sink, because I knew soon it would be my turn. Then came court. I'll never forget walking into that courtroom. Not because of the judge, not because of the attorney, because of my family. I looked over and I saw my mom, I saw my sister. They were crying, not because they hated me, not because they wanted to punish me. They were heartbroken. I broke their hearts. That hurt more than any sentence ever could. I realized something sitting in that courtroom. I wasn't the only one doing time. Every decision I made had sentenced my family too. My mom had to wake up before sunrise to catch buses just to spend 15 or 30 minutes with her son behind the glass. She carried my sentence with me. My sister carried it too. Those tears, those faces, I've never forgotten them. To this day, whenever I'm faced with a difficult decision, I still see that courtroom. I still see my mother's face. After 6 long months of fighting my case, I accepted a deal, a strike, and a 3-year joint suspension. At the time, I thought I had won. I was going home. I thought this was my second chance. But joint suspension isn't freedom, it's borrowed time. One mistake, and every day you owe comes back. About 1.5 years later, I made that mistake. I picked up another case, This time, there were no deal that sent me home. I was sentenced to 48 months in prison. People hear 4 years and you think about a calendar. But prison doesn't count time the way outside world does. Prison counts moments, missed birthdays, missed Christmases, missed first words, missed funerals, missed opportunities. Every day starts looking exactly like the day before. Same concrete, the same steel, the same sounds, the same routine for long periods. We lived under 23-hour lockdowns. Think about that for a second. 23 hours locked inside a tiny concrete box. Not a room, a cell. A space barely big enough for 2 bunk beds, a toilet, and a sink. And I wasn't alone. Another grown man lived in the same cell with me. No privacy, no personal space. Just 2 people trying to survive in a place that was never built for living. People ask me sometimes, what was prison really like? One thing I'll never forget is something called taking a bird bath. For those who don't know what that is, a bird bath is how you clean yourself when you don't have access to a shower. You sit on a toilet connected to a little sink, fill up a small prison-issued cup with water, and slowly pour it over yourself. Again and again and again. Trying to wash your body 1 cup at a time, while another man sits only a few feet away. That's your reality. That's your normal. Think about how much privacy we take for granted every day. In prison, privacy doesn't exist. Dignity slowly disappears. You begin adapting to things that no human being should ever have to adapt to. You stop asking, how did I end up here? Because survival becomes more important than reflection. Looking back now, I think that's one of the saddest parts of incarceration. Not just losing your freedom, it's how quick you begin accepting conditions that should never feel normal. Every day looked the same. Wake up, count, eat, count, lockdown, count. Sleep, repeat. Time almost stopped existing, but while the days all looked the same, life outside kept moving. People were getting married, children were growing up, families were celebrating birthdays. The world kept turning, and I was standing still. Then one day, I got the news that changed me forever. My big sister had died in her sleep. She was the glue that held our family together. Every family has that person, the one who makes sure everyone shows up for birthdays, the one who calls everyone during the holidays, the one who keeps people connected. That was my sister. And when she died, I wasn't there. I couldn't hug my mother. I couldn't carry her casket. I couldn't tell her I loved her one last time. I sat in that prison cell, feeling more hopeless than I ever had in my life. That pain stayed with me. When I eventually walked out of those prison gates, I left with my freedom, but I also carried grief, anger, shame, and pain that I didn't know how to process. And instead of dealing with that pain, I ran from it. That's when heroin entered my life. And I had no idea that the battle I was about to face would be even harder than prison. When I got out of prison, I told myself I was never going back. I meant it. I think almost everyone leaving prison means it. The problem is, wanting to change and knowing how to change are 2 completely different things. I walked out carrying years of anger, guilt, grief, and trauma. I had lost my sister. I carried shame for everything I had put my family through. I still hadn't healed from the things I experienced as a child. And instead of facing those emotions, I found a way to silence them. Heroin. At first, it wasn't about getting high. It was about escaping. Escaping my thoughts, escaping my memories, escaping myself. For a little while, it worked. For a few hours at a time, everything became quiet. The pain disappeared, the guilt disappeared, the anxiety disappeared, until it wore off. Then everything came back, only worse. That's the lie addiction tells you. It convinces you that it's solving your problems, when it's actually becoming your biggest one. I remember all those years before prison, I used to look down on people who hid in a trap house using drugs. I tell myself I'll never be like them. I had more control than that. But addiction doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how tough you think you are. It doesn't care what promises you've made. Little by little, I became everything I swore I would never become. Then something happened that poured gasoline on that fire. I received an $18,000 settlement from a car accident. Most people would have used that money to get ahead, maybe buy a reliable car, pay rent, start over. I didn't do any of that. Every dollar I touched went straight into my addiction. Within a short period of time, every penny was gone, and so was I. I became homeless, broke, hopeless. Completely controlled by heroin. The drug wasn't just taking my money anymore. It was taking my identity. It was taking my integrity. It was taking my future. Worst of all, it was taking me away from the people I love. I chose drugs over my children. I chose drugs over my family. I chose drugs over myself. Those are hard words to say out loud, but recovery taught me something. Healing starts with honesty. If I can't tell the truth about who I was, I'll never appreciate who I become. For me, rock bottom had an address, MacArthur Park. Some people know it by another name, Zombieland. If you've never been there, it's hard to explain. People aren't hiding their addiction, it's happening right in front of you. Everywhere you look, someone is using, someone is unconscious, someone is asking for money, someone is trying to survive another day. I used to tell myself, as long as I never end up in MacArthur Park or Skid Row, I'm not doing that bad. Then one day, there I was. The first time I went, someone handed me fentanyl. I remember sitting there, looking around, looking at myself, and asking one question: what am I doing here? This isn't me. I got up and I left. I wish I could tell you that was the end. It wasn't. I came back. Because addiction doesn't care about your promises. It only cares about feeding itself. That night, I ran out of heroin. Anyone who's been through withdrawals knows it's almost impossible to describe. Your body aches, your bones hurt, you can't sleep, you can't sit still. Your mind convinces you that one more hit will fix everything. I tossed, I turned, I couldn't get comfortable. I had a security camera inside my room. Honestly, I had never really watched the recordings. But for some reason, that night I decided to. I sat there watching the screen, then I saw my mom. She thought I was asleep. She didn't know there was a camera recording. She sat beside my bed, crocheting quietly. Every few minutes she would stop, she'd lean over, just to make sure I was still breathing. Then she'd sit back down, she'd put her hand over me and she'd pray. Then she'd check on me again, over and over and over. I watched my 70-year-old mother spend the night wondering if her son was going to die before sunrise. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't giving up on me. She wasn't telling me how disappointed she was. She was praying. She still loved me. Even when I couldn't love myself, I completely lost it. I cried harder than I had cried in years, not because I was sick, because I finally saw what my addiction was doing to the people who love me. Addiction convinces you that you're only hurting yourself. That's a lie. Everyone who loves you suffers with you. They lose sleep with you. They cry with you. They pray with you. Next morning, I looked at my girlfriend. She had stayed awake all night, making sure I didn't overdose on her day off. I looked at her and I said, find me a detox. I'll go. She looked at me like she couldn't believe what she had just heard, because she had heard promises before. My family had heard promises before. I had made promises to myself before. But this time, something felt different. She immediately started making phone calls, By 7 o'clock the next morning, I was on my way. The night before detox was one of the hardest nights of my life. I must have gotten in that shower maybe 50 times. The hot water was the only thing that gave me even a few seconds of relief. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour felt impossible. There were moments when my mind screamed, just leave. Go use one more time. No one would know. But another voice, a quieter voice, kept saying, if you leave now, nothing changes. So I stayed. Years before, I had gone to rehab once already. But the truth is, I didn't want to be there. The court wanted me there. If the judge hadn't ordered it, I never would have walked through those doors. This time was different. This wasn't for probation. This wasn't for parole. This wasn't to impress anyone. This time, I wanted my life back. I didn't just find detox. I stayed. I completed 7 months of residential treatment. For the first time in my life, I stopped running. I started looking at the pain instead of hiding from it. I started asking myself questions I never asked before. Why was I always searching for acceptance? Why did I believe I wasn't enough? Why did I spend my whole life trying to become someone else? And maybe the biggest question of all, who is George? Without the streets, without prison, without heroin, without all the masks. I didn't know the answer yet. But for the first time, I was finally willing to find out. When I completed rehab, I knew something. Getting clean was only the beginning. Recovery isn't something that ends when you leave treatment. Recovery is something you choose every single day. I needed structure, I needed accountability, I needed people who believed in me before I fully believed in myself. That's when I walked through the doors of Homeboy Industries. I thought I was walking into a program. I didn't realize I was walking into a family. People always ask me, what makes Homeboys different? The answer isn't complicated. Love. Real love. The kind that ignores your mistakes. The kind that looks you in the eyes, tells you the truth, and refuses to give up on you. For most of my life, I thought respect changed people. I thought fear changed people. I thought punishment changed people. I learned something different. Love changes people. Homeboy gave me opportunities I never thought I'd have. I started in the silk screening enterprise. Every morning we'd make shirts. Some people might think it's just making clothes. But to us, it was so much bigger than that. It was showing up, learning responsibility, working as a team, earning an honest paycheck, feeling proud of something we created. For the first time in years, I was making money I didn't have to look over my shoulders for. I could finally look in the mirror and know I was earning an honest living. Eventually, I was promoted into the education department. That became one of the greatest privileges of my life. I had the opportunity to help other men and women who reminded me of myself, people working towards their high school diploma, their GED, even college. Many of them believed they were too far behind. Some people hadn't been inside a classroom for years. Some thought they weren't smart enough. Every time they doubted themselves, I saw a younger version of me, because I used to believe those same lies. Then something happened that I never imagined. The little boy who thought he wasn't good enough graduated from high school. I still remember walking across that stage. To some people, a high school diploma is expected. To me, it represented every obstacle that tried to convince me I would never amount to anything. That diploma wasn't just paper. It was proof that my past no longer had control over my future. Then I enrolled in East Los Angeles College and completed my peer support specialist training. I wanted to understand recovery not only through my own experience, but also through education. Because lived experience is powerful, but when you combine lived experience with knowledge, you become even more effective at helping others. Around that same time, I completed a digital fluency class through FieldMed Coding. If someone had told me the younger Jorge that one day he'd be learning computers, giving presentations, and standing in front of classrooms, I would have laughed. Because I never imagined that life for myself. One opportunity led to another. Then one day, I was offered the position of intake coordinator at Homeboy's in the First Street Youth Program. To most people, that title probably doesn't sound very exciting. But to me, it's one of the greatest honors of my life. Because every single day, I get to meet young people who remind me of myself. Some come through the doors angry, some scared, some don't trust adults. Some have already convinced themselves that society has given up on them. I understand that feeling, because I used to be one of them. When I sit across from a young person, I'm not looking at their worst mistake. I'm looking at their potential. I ask questions. I listen. I try to understand their story before offering advice. Because one lesson I've learned is this: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give another human being is simply making them feel heard. Sometimes healing begins because someone finally says, I believe you, I see you, you matter. That's what someone did for me. Now I'll get to do it for someone else. There are moments when a young person shares something they've never told anyone before. Those moments remind me why I'm here. Not because I have all the answers, but because I understand what hopelessness feels like. I understand what shame feels like. I understand what starting over feels like. Today I have my own apartment. I pay my rent with honest money. That means something to me. I have my driver's license, something I never thought I'd have. I'm able to help support my parents instead of hurting them. I'm able to show up for my children, and every chance I get, I try to remind them that they're loved. Because I know what it's like to spend years wondering if you are. One of my favorite memories happened not too long ago. I celebrated my mom's birthday. Just being there, laughing together, watching her smile. Some people might think that's ordinary. For me, it was extraordinary. There was a time she wasn't sure if I lived long enough to celebrate another birthday with her. Now I get to create memories instead of regrets. And that is a blessing I'll never take for granted. People sometimes ask me, what changed? The truth is, my life didn't change overnight. There wasn't one magical moment. It was thousands of small decisions. Choosing recovery, choosing honesty, choosing accountability, choosing to ask for help, choosing to keep showing up, especially on the days I didn't feel like it. There's a quote that has stayed with me throughout this journey. A little candle in the dark punches back the darkness. Think about that. Darkness doesn't disappear because someone yells at it. Darkness disappears because someone turned on that light. For a long time, I was waiting for someone else to save me. Then I realized I had to be willing to light my own candle. Homeboys handed me the match. My family protected the flame. God gave me the strength to keep carrying it. Now my responsibility is to help light someone else's. There's another saying I love: hurt people hurt people. For years, I thought that explained my life. And I discovered something even more important. Healed people heal people. That's the life I want to live. Not because I'm perfect, I'm not. I still have hard days. I still have regrets. There are memories that still hurt. There are people I wish I could apologize to. There are moments I wish I could take back. But I've learned something. We can't rewrite our past. We can't write a different future. If there's one thing I hope you remember after tonight, is this: never decide someone's future based on the chapter they're living today. Because if someone had judged me by my worst chapter, I would have never become the man standing before you. They would have seen a gang member, a convicted felon, a heroin addict, a homeless man. Instead, people choose to see something I couldn't see in myself: potential. And because someone believed in me, I learned to believe in myself. Today I stand before you not because I've had an easy life, but because I refuse to let my hardest moment define the rest of it. I'm living proof that redemption is possible. I'm living proof that recovery is possible. I'm living proof that second chances matter. If you're here tonight and you're struggling, if you feel like you're carrying too much, if you think you've gone too far, I want you to hear this from someone who once believed exactly the same thing. You are not beyond hope. Your story is not over. Your past may explain you, but it does not have to define you. Remember what I told you at the beginning. As a little boy, I believed my family would be better off without me. Today, I know something different. Today, I know my life has purpose. Today, I know I belong. Today, I know that my pain wasn't wasted. It became my purpose. I'm closer to where I'm trying to get than where I started, so I just keep going. Because every step forward, no matter how small, is still forward. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you. I'm never without words, but I am. The poet Galway Kinnell says, sometimes it's necessary to reteach a thing its loveliness. And so kind of that's the Christian task, it seems to me, is to walk with each other home to loveliness, to remind people of the truth of who they are. It's not about performance. That was a word you used. It's about fidelity, about somehow putting one foot in front of the next, one loving foot in front of the next. Oh, nobly born, remember who you really are. So we're helping each other remember that. And so we stand in awe at the courage of your tenderness. And you give us hope. And we need hope, especially, I would say, right now. And so it's important to share your story with people with good and open hearts, as we have in this room. So thank you one more time. Jorge works at Homeboy, and Feline has received services there. So, and they're blessed to have each other. And so tomorrow, Feline will share some of her story with all of us. I think I'm going to leave. We'll do Q&A on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, the two of them will begin and do kind of a shorter version of their stories for perhaps a larger audience. I don't know who will show up on Wednesday afternoon. Then I'll yak, and then I'll bring them up for question and answer. So ruminate your questions so that come Wednesday afternoon, you will have known the two of them, and you can, anything that's on your mind, any question that you might want to ask. When I was a little kid, all my siblings, we were always told, don't go to the attic. And of course, we felt that was an invitation to the attic. And so, because it was kind of precarious and there were loose planks and God knows what. So we went up there and we were rummaging through all the things that were stored up there, and we found a box of old records. And we found this kind of red clay one, really old, and it had a song on each side. And one song was "Oh Holy Night," and we scurried down stairs and put it on our little phonograph. And we discovered, we had never known this, that our mom before she had 8 kids, was an opera singer. And so we play O Holy Night, and we just could not believe that this glorious voice belonged to the same woman who hollered at us, you know. And I can remember as a kid just playing the grooves off this thing. And so beyond the voice were the words. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. And yet it's about Christmas, and yet it's about Jesus, but how is it not the job description of everybody in this room? You appear, and the soul feels its worth. It's not because you're saving, rescuing somebody, like say George, but because you're holding the mirror up, and you appear, and the soul will feel the worth, their own worth. Maybe you will pull the favor out of them, and suddenly they're going to walk away, and for the first time, they feel favorable. And this is, again, the point of receiving the tender glance and then choosing to become that tender glance. To notice the notice of God, and then choosing to be that notice. This is what we are meant to do as disciples. Disciples don't grow in goodness. They grow in love. As Jorge said, you know, it's deceptively simple. Love. And if you find your true self in loving, and if you find that loving is your home, then you are aligning yourself to the energies of the God we have. But we get stuck, you know. We have these notions, like, for example, sin. You know, the word, you know, amartia, sin, it means to miss the mark. And we always think it means you haven't did enough, you know. But what if the mark is joy? That's what we miss. Maybe that's the thing. It's not like a bullseye and you go, oh wow, your arrow's way down here. What's your problem? Can't you do anything right? Here's the bullseye. You miss the mark by a lot. But what if the thing we miss is not perfection, but joy? Jesus says, my joy, yours, your joy complete. And that's what the hope is. Many years ago, I got a phone call at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was from a kid. I say kid, he was in his 30s probably. A kid named Horacio. I knew him since he was a little mocosito in the housing projects. I remember in the 1988 a huge earthquake that sent everybody in the housing projects in my parish to live in tents in the huge playgrounds they have in the projects. And they would not go back into their homes. It really took a long time because they had a collective memory as Mexicans and as Central Americans of how devastating earthquakes were and how they return and reverberate. And I remember him, a 10-year-old kid, saying, is this the end of the world? And I assured him that it wasn't. Well, now he's calling me at 3 o'clock on an afternoon, and he just got out of prison after 10 years. And he was very proud of himself. He said, you know, I'm not going to the neighborhood, my gang territory. I'm not kicking it with the homies. And I said, well, I'm proud of you. And he said, I went back to where I was living with my girlfriend, and I see a neighbor there that I knew. And this was 10 years ago. And he said, oh yeah, your lady took all your clothes and put it in the backyard and set it all on fire. And Horacio says, I think she might have been mad at me. Maybe. And he said, so let me just cut to the cheese, which was not an expression I was familiar with. And he said, well, now I don't have any clothes, so do you think you could go buy me some clothes? And I said, sure, I'll pick you up at 6, and he told me where he would be. And I'm used to homies, you know, you have to knock on the door or go find them or, you know, where were you? No, there was Horacio, standing on the exact corner where he told me he would be. And he's quite changed. I can see as I'm pulling up. You know, it's 10 years of lifting weights in prison, so he's transformed. He's swole, as the homies would say. And, you know, apparently God had forgotten to give him a neck, you know, and heavily tattooed in a way he hadn't been. And so when he sees me, he does this yippee skippy, oh my God, happy to see me thing. And then he leaps into the car, he throws his arms around me, plants a big old wet kiss on my cheek. And he says, when I saw you right now, I got all happy. I said, well, me too. So we go to J.C. Penney. I tell him how much money he has to spend, and he spends it. And we're in line, and the both of us are holding all the clothes that he's picked out. And it's a long line, and the cashiers are doing the best they can. And Horacio has a loud-ass voice, oh my God. And as we're standing there, he sees this couple with a small boy, their son. And he says, you see that couple over there? And everybody in line, including the cashier, we all look. And he says, well, I thought I knew that guy. So I walked up to him, I said, hey, don't I know you? And the wife, she grabs the boy and she goes, no. And the guy grabs his wife and says, no, we do not know you. And then I looked more closely. Oh, my bad. I thought you were somebody else. And se ponen all relaxed. Damn, gee. Am I that scary looking? I go, oh, yeah, pretty much. You are. Everyone in line laughed. So we went to have dinner, and then I was driving him back to that place. And he hesitated to get out, and so he said, you know, I'm afraid to be out. I said, I don't blame you. It's scary. But you know, you have a great heart. If you stay close to that heart, you're going to be fine. And he hugged me. Planted another kiss on my cheek, and he left. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call, and it's Horacio. And homies always say when they call in the middle of the night, did I wake you? And I said, no, I was just, hoping you might call. And so I try to inquire to see if he has been drinking, and he hasn't, and I'm waiting for him, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm waiting for him to cut to the cheese, And he says, all my life, I've seen you as my father. And now I have to ask you a question. I said, okay. And his voice starts to crack. Have I been your son? I said, oh, hell yeah. And he goes, whew. I thought so. And now he really can't speak. Then you will be my father, and I will be your son, and nothing will separate us, right? I said, that's right. And he said, good night. I always think of that story because he did not discover he had a father that night. He discovered that he was a son worth having. And there's a big difference. The voice comes through the cloud, you are my beloved, in whom I'm wonderfully pleased. And it is our task to remind each other of the truth of who we are, to see as God sees, to love without measure and without regret. And yes, sometimes it's necessary to reteach a thing its loveliness. O nobly born, remember who you really are, and let's remind each other. See you tomorrow.